Alright, so we are going to look at rendering some still images from our project, just like if we were a photographer that's traveled to this land and we just want to take a picture with our camera. We want to turn on the resolution gate so that we can basically look through the viewfinder of our camera. So if you go to the View menu, Camera Settings, click on Resolution Gate. Now we're going to see this is exactly what we'll get when we render. I want to make sure that I'm choosing a composition that looks interesting, just like when we learned about our design principles with balance and focal point and things like that. Make sure that you're not just randomly taking a shot, but you're trying to think about what would make this a nice image. Maybe this is something that I would actually photograph in real life. So I've got a composition that I'm liking. I can even come do a test render up here. And I'm seeing my sky back here, and with my shot I can see my little teeny flower over there. So that's looking pretty good to me, so I'm ready to start getting my render settings in there. So next to the Hypershade button is the display render settings, so I'm going to click on that. You want to kind of double check right here where it says path. If you set up your project correctly, it should be telling you that your files are going to be rendered into the images folder, into your project folder. So mine is called City, and then your project folder will show up wherever you saved it. My project folder happens to be on the desktop, so just look and see, are you seeing your project folder and then the images folder? That's where your stuff will be rendered to. Then we're going to come down here to where it says file name prefix. What do you want to name your JPEG when you're done? So I'm going to go ahead and name this Shot 1. Under image format, the default is this Maya if file. That's some weird file that you're not going to be able to open in Photoshop, or it doesn't act like a regular image file. So you want to come in and change this to JPEG, which is more standard. Single frame on the extension setup. This is just how it's going to name your file. So it's going to name it whatever name you give it. So Shot1 dot extension, so JPEG. And I'm only rendering a single frame at a time right now, so this is good. I'm going to leave that alone. And then I'm going to scroll down and look at renderable camera. What camera am I looking through as I decided on this shot? So this is my perspective camera, so I want to make sure I'm rendering my perspective camera. We already talked about our image size before, so I'll just leave that at 720. So I gave it a name, I made sure it was a JPEG, I made sure I'm rendering the right camera, and that I have the resolution that I want. All this is set up, I'm good to go. So I'm going to close this, and I can either go change my menu set to rendering and come to render to choose render sequence, or if you look, you have a rendering tab on your shelf, and there is a shortcut here for the render sequence. I can click this as well, so I'm just going to click on that, and you're going to see that kind of pop up here. But the key is if you go look in your files, so I'm going to go to my desktop, and there's my City folder, there's images. I should now have a file in here called Shot1. And if I double click on that, I have it, but do you see how it's a lot darker than what we thought it was going to look like? Starting with Maya 2017, there's been a glitch going on that is making this darker than it should be. When you look in your render settings, there is an option in here to, I put here at the top, to apply color management, which, if you look over here, this is your color management. So we already have a gamma that is being applied, and that's what we should see, but for some reason it's not applying it. when we render. So this is the workaround that you're going to use. If you have your render settings back open, here is the Maya software tab. You're going to scroll down to where it says render options, and when you open that up, there's another one in here that says color and compositing, and by default it's got that 1.0 gamma correction. Go ahead and change that to 2.2, and then we're going to close it. So again, this is just a fix. We're kind of overcompensating here. So what's weird is if I change that to 2.2, when I do a test render, it's already applying it. It's going to be too bright here, but don't worry about that, because at this point what we care about is what the file renders out to. So I'm going to go ahead and hit my render sequence button right here, and it's re-rendering that frame with the 2.2 applied. So when I come back and I go into my project folder and I look inside of images, here's my shot 1 file that I just re-rendered, and now it's nice and bright the way that we intended. So while you are inside working on your project and you're still trying to get things the way you want, in your render settings, keep that gamma correction to 1.0. So when I preview render, it looks the way I want. But when I'm actually ready to render, in that Maya software tab, I'll put the gamma correction at 2.2. So I've got the first shot. If I need to turn in 3 different shots for my assignment, I'm now just going to come over to decide what do I want my next shot to be. So maybe this time I'm going to show off this awesome flower pot that I created. Again, I'm thinking about composition, rule of thirds. So here's my shot that I want. I'm even going to do a test render to take a look at that. I've still got that 2.2 gamma turned on, so it's looking awfully bright here. So again, just because I want to make sure I have everything the way I want, when I'm testing it, I want my gamma at 1. Okay, so this looks pretty good to me. I'm going to close that out. I'm ready to actually render, so I'm going to change that gamma to 2.2. I also want to come back to the Common tab and this time name it Shot 2 so that it doesn't save on top of that first one that I did. So I have Shot 2, my gamma is at 2.2. I can go ahead and click on Render Sequence, and then when I come back and look at my files, I should have Shot 1 and Shot 2 inside of my images folder. So here's Shot 2, and there's my flowers.